It's Platt, and today we head to the Bluegrass State. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. All right, so the particular beer we have today is Kentucky Tangerine Cream Ale. Comes to us from the fine folks at Lexington Brewing. We previously tried their Bourbon Barrel Ale, and I remember that was pretty good beer, so I have high hopes for this one. A little background onto Lexington Brewing. The company is actually Lexington Brewing and Distilling. They do beer and spirits. One of the few companies that do both. They're, of course, based in Lexington, Kentucky. They were founded by a gentleman named Pierce Lyons in 1999, and Pierce might have been the perfect person to open a brewery. That is because Pierce was a biochemist from Ireland who immigrated to the United States. Pierce's actual PhD was the biochemistry of yeast. The guy knew his stuff, for goodness sake. But before he got in the brewing business, he started another venture. In 1980, he started a company called Alltech that made animal nutrition products. He utilized the whole education. Now, Alltech today is the parent company of Lexington Brewing. Basically, Alltech helped fund the real dream, which was to open a brewery. The brewery itself was an actual old brewery known at the time as Lexington Brewing Company that had been in the Lexington area for over 100 years. But at the time he bought it, apparently the brewery was abandoned and he went in and remodeled. Now, the distilling part didn't come around until 2007 when he opened Town Branch Distilling. Technically, they're separate, but they're next door or across the street from each other. And Lexington Brewing actually produces the mash and then pipes it over to the distillery, which is kind of cool. But they're conceptually separate, but they pipe in the mash to the other one. Now, even though they opened the distillery in 2007, they did not start selling products till 2011. They waited to age their product before they sold anything. Most distilleries these days either source by, something already aged from a company like MGP, or they produce a vodka or a gin, something that does not need aging that they can get on the shelves quickly. But Town Branch did not do that. They would later on, though, add some of those products. Speaking of one bit of bad news, fortunately, Pierce passed away in 2018, but his son took over the company and still runs it today, so at least it's still in the family, which is kind of cool. Let's talk about some of their products. Again, they have beers and spirits, so we'll talk about a couple of each. First, let's start off with beers. The first one is Kentucky Maple Barrel Stout. Comes in at 12% ABV. This is brewed with real brown sugar and aged in maple barrels. That just sounds like a ton of deliciousness. I'm definitely going to keep my eye out for that one. Next is their Irish Red Ale, 5.3% ABV. I really like an Irish Red Ale. I think it's an underrated style of beer. I wish there was more of those out there. This particular one is aged in a bourbon barrel, so just, again, more flavor, which I always love. Real quick, let's talk about some of their spirits. Even though they didn't start off selling, a vodka or gin or whatever, they do have a gin called Halfpenny Rhubarb Gin. Comes in at 80 proof. They actually juice the rhubarb. This is not just throwing a few sticks in the gin basket to produce, but they actually juice the rhubarb, and it does affect the color of the gin. If you see a bottle, you'll get it. Lastly, and one I find kind of interesting, is Pierce's original 5-year Irish whiskey. Yes, I guess they're making Irish whiskey in Lexington, Kentucky. If anybody knows why the TTB allows that or whatever, because I had to do kind of a double take of their website. I'm like, wait a minute, they're making Irish whiskey in Kentucky. But apparently they get to label that, and they have a 5-year, and I think they also have a 7-year. Well, before we try this particular product, though, let's check out the stats. Okay, so before we try this particular beer, time for questions for Platt. If you have a question you'd like for me to answer in the video, please send it to plattsboozblog@gmail.com. In the subject line, put questions for Platt, and hopefully I'll answer your question or get you the information you need. Today's question comes from Air Jazz. Air Jazz asks specifically, why do prisoners use bread in making their prison wine, hooch, or whatever? I've done several homemade wine videos, and a lot of people, this is like the stuff my uncle used to make in the jails and this, that, and the other. And I get a lot of stories of like, well, my uncle used this and that and and they used electrical tape and muffins and what have you. But one of the ones I always hear about is bread. And initially, when I first started hearing these stories, I'm like, well, that couldn't work because they baked the bread. But after a little more research, you can utilize bread. A good way to think about it is if you ever cook like a pork loin or a beef brisket or something like that, and if you don't cook it all the way, you still have microorganisms in the middle. You can still get sick. Well, bread's similar in the sense that if you don't cook it all the way through, or while we're somewhere in the in the deepest part, you might still have some live yeast cells. Now, it all depends on breads. If you think about like classic French bread and Italian baguettes and stuff, those are cooked real hard. Generally cooked through, probably no live yeast cells. But here in America, we like our really soft white bread. And apparently, my research, there's still some live yeast cells. And once you throw them into juice or whatever you have to ferment, that should kick off the yeast activity and they start replicating and growing. Now it's going to take a long time because there's probably just a few yeast cells in that hunk of bread that you throw in. But remember, in prison, the one thing they got plenty of is time. So conceptually, you can find some live yeast cells in bread to kind of kick it off. It's going to take longer, but conceptually it does work. So hopefully that answered your question. All right, enough about that. Let's drink a Tangerine cream ale. I get a malt sweetness on the nose. I'm not really picking up any tangerine. Actually, it reminds me a little bit of Sweet Feed if you've ever been to like a feed store or whatever, but we'll give her a try. Oh, yeah. All right, the tangerine, the cream ale. Boy, there's like a hint of vanilla in that. There's some, the tangerine's not coming off, but kind of the creaminess, which if you thought cream ale or creaminess, yeah, that is coming out. Flavor aged in bourbon barrels. The cream ale with natural flavors. All right, well that's where that's coming from, because I was like, whoa, this doesn't sound like a simple tangerine extract into beer or whatever. There's more to it, but really good tasting. Yeah, that's a nice little beer. Whatever that combination of natural flavors. You pick up something. I can't call it wood, but it does. In the aftertaste, it does kind of remind me of being like in a wooden barn a little bit, if that makes sense. But man, nice beer. Again, the tangerine doesn't stick out, but just a good kind of cream ale with some, vanilla, and you get kind of a wooden barn kind of vibe to it or whatever. A nicely executed brew, I must say. And with that, well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.